everyone, salutations and greetings. This is Classic Gamer 74, and I am your host, Anthony Gamer. And in today's episode, we're going to continue on with even more NES prototypes. Continuing on with our unit on the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES, or the Famicom, we are going to be discussing prototypes or games that never got released. We have at least 2 more episodes in this series before we continue on with more aspects of the NES. And hopefully with these games, I can tell you a little bit about them and possibly explain why they weren't released. As in previous game systems like the ColecoVision and Atari 2600 and Intellivision, they had the video game crash of 83 and 84 to explain why some games didn't get released. However, there was not a video game crash during this time period, so they couldn't blame that. And if this is your first time to our channel, welcome and thank you for becoming a part of the Classic Gamer 74 family. Always happy to check on the channel and see new people coming. It's really great to have you here. And if you are unfamiliar with what a prototype is, these are games that were planning to be released for a particular game system, but for some reason or another, they were not released. Now, luckily, over a period of years, some prototype ROMs have been discovered, or the prototypes were discovered, and then whoever had the ROMs dumped them. However, there were a few that did not get dumped, and we will reserve those for the final episode. But for today, let's look at some unreleased games for the NES that were and are now available in ROM format. So without further ado, let's get into the games. And our first game today is Robert Burns' Pool Challenge. Now, this was said to be released, I believe, in 91. According to an auction, this US-based company called Odyssey Software had started developing this game. They gained the license support of the professional pool player and instructor Robert Burns in order to use his name. Advertisements for the game would appear all over the place in magazines and things like that. Alright, now the completion of the game stalled for months as Odyssey struggled to get the game's pool ball physics just right. In the meantime, its publisher American Video Entertainment collapsed financially, and so Robert Burns' Pool Challenge was promptly canceled. So what about the game? Well, it's a typical pool game. It's nothing really special. There are several different options that you can choose from, different types of pool, 1 to 2 players. Really, it's not a bad game overall. In a previous episode, I did review several other pool games for different game systems, and it kind of fits in with the others, nothing special, but at the same time, it's kind of a shame it wasn't released. Next up, we have RoboCop vs. Terminator. Now, this is interesting because even though this version of the game was not released for the NES, it would get released for other game systems like the Super NES, Game Gear, the Sega Genesis, and Game Boy, which is kind of interesting. But honestly, the first game would actually get released in 1993, so I guess they decided, well, this was the time period where the Super NES was taken off. I guess that's probably why they decided just to cancel the game. The story behind it is just basically combining the 2 franchises, that of RoboCop versus Terminator. The story has to do with the fact that John Connor's resistance force finds out that Skynet, who had created the Terminators, had used a similar software that they'd used with RoboCop. So they're going back, sent somebody named Flo back in time to kind of right the wrongs, and you take on the role of the Terminator, of the RoboCop, and you're trying to help fix the future, which kind of was a reoccurring theme in RoboCop. Now, besides that, they actually did have a limited comic book series as well. There was not a movie made of this, which would have been kind of interesting, I think. But Regardless, if you were interested in trying this game out, I do recommend it. It's a pretty cool game. The Super NES, the Mega Drive, or Genesis versions were pretty cool as well. Alright, next up we have Secret Ties. Now, this unreleased game is an English translation of a game called Master Thief Sugar, which also was not released. It was based on a very early comic book from the 1970s, or a manga by a gentleman named Takeo Saito. In this game, you take on the role of a professional thief for hire named Silk, who is being sent to get some stuff. He thinks he's getting an everyday assignment. A gentleman by the name of Vince Brazen, an employee of the WorldCon security agency, has hired Silk to steal some ancient artifacts from an old temple. It's kind of an alright game. One person, a gentleman on LostLevels.org, a gentleman by the name of Frank Kifaldi, kind of described it as a Ninja Gaiden clone, which is kind of, I'll go with him on that one. Not a great game and not wholly original. I don't think it would have really done that well if it had been released, because I don't think a lot of people even really know who Master Thief Sugar was. At that point in time, manga were not as big over in this side of the world as they have become. My daughter, of course, loves manga. And even if it says that it didn't get released in Japan, so, that kind of tells you something there. Like I said, yeah, not a great game, but, not the worst that I've ever reviewed. Alright, next up from 1991 we have Squash. Now, this is actually an English translation of a game that was released for the Famicom called Ninja Jaja Maru Ginga Daisaku-san. And it was, as I said, was released by the company Jalico. This was another third-party developer that was trying to keep up with Nintendo, Tecmo, and Capcom. So they decided to create their own platformer game, and they chose this ninja named Maru. And he also has a young lady. You have a choice of the boy or the girl. And what you're doing, Corey is her name, excuse me. And so they learn that King Kale needs the pair's help to prevent 6 worlds from being dominated by a mysterious being known as Vegatron. Okie dokie then. Basically, in my opinion, this is kind of a Mario ripoff. I believe the original game was a bigger hit in Japan. It actually looks pretty cool from what I've seen of it. It's just too bad though this localized version didn't really keep up with the original, and I think Jalico knew it as well, and that's why this localized version was not released. And next up we have Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Now, it's hard to imagine a Star Trek game not getting released, honestly, because of the large number of Star Trek fans that are out there. But I think it was because this game was canceled because the movie itself was not a big hit. I think and also the version that did come out was actually incomplete, from what I've heard. The prevailing belief from a lot of Trekkers and Trekkies that I've talked to have told me that the even Star Trek movies are always better than the odd ones. So this, unfortunately, was not a well-received movie, and I think they kind of figured, well, let's just not do it. So, yeah, they didn't finish the game, and I believe it was in 2006 that this four-stage prototype was found. So, yeah, even if you are a Star Trek fan like I am, I didn't care for it that much. Alright, and next up we have Sunman. Now, originally, according to stories that I've heard, this was supposed to be a Superman game. However, I think there were some issues with the licensing and all that stuff. So the game itself was canceled. Now, what you're looking at here is a very, very early prototype, very incomplete prototype with Superman, which is how it was originally intended to be. And here is the what would have been the final version, as they decided to just call the guy Sunman. Very reminiscent of Superman, of course, but I guess they kind of decided to go with their own character. Yeah, but unfortunately, I think as it was 1992 and the Super NES was starting to really take over, I guess they just kind of figured, you know what, forget it. So the game itself never got released. Is it a good game? Actually, yeah, it kind of is. Even the brief Superman demo, or the Superman themed game, was kind of neat. And if you get into the Sunman game, you're really going to enjoy it. Actually, it's pretty well made, and it's just a shame that they lost the license, because honestly, this Superman game would have been a heck of a lot better than that one particular version that we don't speak of. So, kind of a lost opportunity here. Okay, so Jalico strikes back again, and another localized game from the same series that was not released in North America. And this is Jaja Maru Nui Chu, which was going to be called Taro's Quest in America. Again, we have our same gentleman here, Maru, as he is on a different type of quest. What's interesting now is this is an RPG game as opposed to a platformer. I'm not really that big into RPG games, so I didn't really care for it, but I did read a really cool review on the game, and it actually, I think I'm going to give it another look, because I think I may actually enjoy it, especially because, the RPG game that did get released is in Japanese, so I think I'm going to give this one another try. If you're into RPG, you probably will really enjoy it. Now, this next one has a real interesting story. This is Diver Eon Man. This was going to be released by Taito in 1993. It was complete, ready to go out the door. It even received a 4-page strategy guide and review in issue 45, February 1993 of Nintendo Power. And despite all that, the game itself was not released. According to legend, it actually was supposed to be a sequel to Wrath of the Black Manta. Now, the story behind it is Earth is 60 years in the future. The world is virtually crime-free thanks to clear system invented by Kane Nelson, scientist extraordinaire. That is, until a secret organization called Romedrux decided to challenge the system by unleashing a plague of crime. In order for them to succeed, they'll need to prevent the clear system from ever being invented. And that means eliminating Kane or his ancestors. In Los Angeles, 1993, Dan Nelson thought he was an ordinary student living in LA until the day he found himself under attack by Romedrux warriors. During the attack, Dan learns about his future son Kane and vows to protect his family, past, present, and future. It's a shame the game wasn't released, but you can play it, and if you run into some problems, hunt down that copy of Nintendo Power Magazine to help you out. And our final game for today is Titan Warriors. Now, this was a successor to a game called Vulgus, an endlessly looping shooter that was released in 1984. This was supposed to be the second one. And in this one, you actually have boss fights, and there's different worlds to go to, etc., etc. Now, this was supposed to get released in 1988, and I've dug all over the internet, and I cannot find out why it was not released. According to most reports, it seemed like the game was good to go, ready to go. It just had a few bugs that needed to be fixed. But for some reason, Capcom decided not to release it. Not in the US and not on the Famicom. So, honestly, it's a typical space shooter, nothing special, but, there were a lot of other space shooters that did come out. So, who knows why this one was canceled. In our next episode, we will have our final in our series of prototypes for the NES. Well, that brings this episode of Classic Gamer 74 to a close. I really hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did like it, let me know by giving me a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when I upload any new episodes. Also, don't forget that I have just opened my own merch store at Teespring. You'll find the link in the description below. I got some really cool Classic Gamer 74 merchandise that you're going to love. Don't forget to use the promo code CG74 at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Connect with me on all my social media platforms, and don't forget to check out my Patreon page. Well, until next time, this has been Anthony Gamer, wishing you a great week. Until next time, be strong, be safe, be happy, be healthy, and above all, take care of each other, be kind to each other, and stop hate of all kinds. See you soon. Bye for now.